Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Mr. Parks back with another homework help video for 5th grade for lesson 2.2. So after spending a couple of days working with multiplication, we started working on our lesson with division today. So one of the things that we are going to do is try to relate back to something that students did as 4th graders where they saw a picture that looks a little bit like this. And we use this to help us learn the concept for multiplying two-digit numbers together. As it relates to division for this lesson, we're not going to need these extra lines, but I'll show you real quick how that plugs in just a moment. We are going to take our dividend of 143. We're breaking it up into two smaller chunks. So the first and biggest chunk is trying to do 10 groups of 11. Okay? So we would put our 11 on the outside. We would hopefully know that 11 times 10 is going to make 110. So this 10 would go up top. We're going to add these two numbers in just a moment. And 11 would go into 33 three times. And our quotient when we are done would give us 13. So just real quick to double check our work. Something that you saw as 4th graders if you're a student would be we started with something that looks like this. And we would multiply 10 times 10 to get 100. 1 times 10 to get 10. 10 times 3 to make 30. And my spacing is a little off. 1 times 3 to make 3. On our right-hand side, 30 plus 3 gets us the 33 we're looking for, so we know that part's good. And the 100 plus 10 gives us 110, so we know this part is good. This is something we could actually do to check our answer. I'm not expecting most teachers to ask a student to do that, but if your teacher does ask you to do that, if you're not one of my students, this is something that we could do from last school year that you could use to check that. All right? So working with this type of picture, you're given the divisor, and then we need to plug in how many times does our divisor go into one of our partial numbers that we're adding together to get our dividend, which is the starting amount. In this case, it was 143. All right. The next thing that we are going to talk about is building a picture for a problem using base 10 blocks. So if you are my student, you are used to hearing these called in a certain way that maybe are not as common as I would like to think they are. So I believe the proper name for the what I call a 100 block is a flat, or at least I've heard it called that way. There might be another name for it. So a square can represent 100. Okay? If you look at that, it's kind of textured, and it kind of shows 10 rows of 10, and the texture would look like if we could make 100 of the centimeter cubes all connect together. That's the kind of texture that the ones that I use in my classroom have. And then we have a 10 block, which I believe is called a long. And then we have a dot, or we could draw a square to represent like the little centimeter cubes. And I refer to those as 1 blocks. So whatever the name is, there's kind of the terminology that I use. So as I'm making the picture, if you hear that and you're confused, maybe back up a moment just to double check. So here we go. We're going to build this whole problem out. So we're going to use our divisor to build the problem. So our divisor is a 12. So one of the things that we talked about in the last problem was knowing that we can make a group of 10 times our divisor. So we can actually do that here. So this number is big enough to actually start with a 100 block and two 10 blocks. So right now we are showing 10 times 12. I'm not going to write anything in right now, so I'm not confusing anybody. Okay? So 12 across the top right now, 10 from top to bottom. Okay? That would give us 120. Okay? So right now, if we wanted to, we could figure out That's a really bad looking 8. My apologies. We could, go ahead and subtract. Again, my apologies. We have 48 more to go, so we could use that to help us. Now, for this picture, we are going to start stacking across the top or the bottom. I'm going to use the bottom. So we would go from 120 up to 132, from 132 up to 144, from 144 up to 156, and then I messed up and didn't drag down far enough, so I'm going to scooch that just a little bit, and 156 plus 12 gets us to 168. So now we are showing 14 groups of 12. So 14 from top to bottom. Again, this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then we can go ahead and say that this represents the total amount, and we've split it up as best we can using our base 10 blocks to show 12 groups or 14 groups, depending on how you want to refer to it. And then the other numbers. So 12 groups of 14 or 14 groups of 12. For our next problem, they want us to draw an area model. So let's go ahead and work through the steps of this together. I am going to start by making a picture that looks like this. Okay? So in our earlier problem, we would say that we want to go ahead and write an 11 on the outside. We need to come up with the answer to 11 times 10. We're going to put that part inside the box here, okay? So 11 times 10 is 110. We're going to write a 10 up top, and then we need to subtract. We need to do 165 minus 110. And that gives us the answer 55. My students are probably like, wait, he started to say an answer out loud. I did. So the other piece of the puzzle here is 55. And then we need to go ahead and figure out how many times 11 goes into 55. That is 5. So here is our entire area model. And 165 divided by 11 gives us 15. We're going to add these two digits together to make our quotient. All right? Now, let's take a look at the homework problems that students are going to be asked to do. We're going to talk about which tasks students are going to be asked to do for which problems to kind of help out. All right? So number 1 is our example. It uses an area model that's already mostly filled out. We have both of our numbers that we're going to add together to get to our dividend. And we know what the divisor is because we have the problem written. So we need to find the quotient by seeing how many times 14 goes into each of these and then adding those two answers together to make the final quotient. Number 3 and number 4 are drawing an area model. So we're going to start by making, again, this picture that starts like this. And then we need to take a look at our divisor. So our divisors are going to go on this side. And then we need to do a little bit of math. Again, anytime we have a number in the hundreds, we probably can make a safe guess to assume that we can have a number 10 here and do 10 times the divisor inside this box. Do your subtraction problem to figure out how much is left over. That's going to go over on this side, and then finish out your division part. Okay? Number 5 and number 6 are both word problems. They are both asking you to do something similar. I'm going to tell my students to make a picture, but you're going to have to put it on a different page. Okay? So we need to figure out how many groups of 13, in this case 13 rows, we need to get to 182. We also need to figure out how many groups of 13 cabins we need to make sure all 156 students have a place to sleep at summer camp. I'm going to suggest to start with number 6 first because you're going to do most of the work making the picture for number 6 that you also need to do for number 5. So if you want to work a little bit smarter or a little bit faster, you can finish this part, recreate your picture for this one, and then keep adding to it. to finish out number 5. Number 7 is a choose your own adventure problem, which I am going to draw a picture for. So we need a division problem with a 3-digit dividend and a divisor between 10 and 20. So our number that we choose to divide by has to be between 10 and 20. And you need to choose a 3-digit number. Here's the problem. During class today, I gave my students an example that had a remainder. So let me show you what to do if that happens, okay? Now, if that happens and your teacher tells you to fix it and choose different numbers, do that, okay? By all means. Now, I am going to do a different set of numbers so that we don't have an example that you can borrow, all right? So I'm going to do something a little bit bigger. We're actually going to cheat, and I call cheating doing something bigger in this case. We're not breaking any rules except for the rules for the problem. We're not stealing answers off of anybody else. I want to find the answer to 1010 divided by, let's do 100. Okay, so 100 goes in one time, we get 100, we subtract, we get 1 left over. How many times does 100 go into 10? It doesn't work. You're correct. That means we would write the number 0 here. So my picture, as I would make it, would be 10 of these guys, which is going to take me just a moment. So I'm going to stack them across a couple rows. I'm going to add one here. 6, 7, 8. I'm going to, again, for sake of time and convenience, I'm going to make some circles to finish my picture. We have a remainder of 10. What would I do with that? I'm going to make an extra 10 block down here. I'm going to circle this part to show this represents my quotient. I can make 10 groups of 100 if I start with 1010. Here is my extra 10 block that is my remainder. Okay? So, for this picture, if we go back to our problem, if you make your own problem and it does not go in evenly, ask your teacher for permission or just to double check, but that is what I'm going to ask my students to do. If it doesn't work perfectly, circle the part that represents the quotient, have the extra remainder out to the side, but represent it using base 10 blocks, okay? It's hard enough to try to get people to try this, and then you feel like you failed because you didn't pick a number that goes in perfectly to the dividend that you started with. Okay, that's a solution for that. So I'm going on a little bit long here, but I want to make sure people understand that so you aren't afraid to try. If you have that happen, I would recommend that you try to do this. Okay, on the back, real quick, because this is going a little bit long. Number 8, again, just make your picture. You can do your long division problem. Number 9, same thing. Make sure for your answer for number 9, you need a $sign, okay? You need to write your unit for how many soccer teams for this one as well. All right? Number 10, standard form is writing using numbers. So we need to create the number 700,020 using numbers. Make sure to use all of your place values. I'm going to give you a suggestion. I usually do it like a fill in the blank, like this. I know I need 100,000s. I would start with this. To work on it and recreate it up here, and then actually write your number on the line. You need 6 digits in your number. Number 11, round to the nearest 1,000. For my students, I usually underline the thousands place, draw an arrow to the digit to the right of that. It's a 3. Think about what your rounding rules are, what direction we need to go, and make sure to write the entire number. Do not forget to use the 7. The 7 needs to be there, okay? Even though this part of the number might change by either going up or change by going back down to zeros for a couple of these digits, We want to use that 7. If you don't use the 7, you are going to write a number that is too small. All right? Please understand that. For number 12 and number 13, number 13, we need to multiply 36 times 14. For number 12, we are doing a division problem, but the only reason it's different is we are dividing by a single digit number, and we don't need to make a picture for this one. This is just a regular write it out. This one's multiplication. Okay, so I hope the video is helpful. Apologies for making it a little bit longer, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood exactly what's expected for them if you are working on this homework assignment. I hope the video is helpful for you. Have a great day, and I hope you will see us on the next video.